"She's pretending to be a lawyer," my brother Derek announced to the State Bar Disciplinary Committee, his voice dripping with manufactured concern. "She never passed the bar exam. She's been defrauding clients for years." My parents sat behind him nodding solemnly, my mother clutching a folder of evidence she'd assembled, my father's jaw set in righteous indignation. I sat alone at the respondents' table, hands folded, saying nothing, waiting for the moment that would shatter every lie they'd carefully constructed. But why did Judge William Harrington, the presiding officer of the disciplinary panel, suddenly stop mid-sentence when he opened my case file, his face draining of color as recognition flooded his eyes? "Counsel, we need a brief recess." His voice was strained. 5 minutes. The panel members exchanged confused glances. My brother's smug expression flickered with the first hint of uncertainty. Judge Harrington didn't wait for agreement. He stood abruptly, took my file, and disappeared into his chambers. The Hamilton family had expectations. My father, Gregory Hamilton, was a thoracic surgeon at Massachusetts General. My mother, Diana, came from old Boston money, the kind that whispered through the halls of private clubs and charity galas. My older brother Derek had followed the acceptable path: Harvard Law, corporate litigation, partner track at a white shoe firm by 32. And then there was me. Vanessa. The problem. Criminal defense, my father had said when I'd announced my career plans during my 3rd year at Columbia Law. "You want to defend criminals?" "I want to defend people accused of crimes." "There's a difference." "There's no difference to the partners at Derek's firm when they see your name associated with murderers and drug dealers. I don't care what Derek's partners think." "You should. We raised you to represent this family with dignity." I'd graduated second in my class, passed the bar on my first attempt, and clerked for a federal judge. None of it mattered. I'd chosen the wrong kind of law. I opened my own practice 8 years ago. Hamilton Defense Associates, operating out of a converted brownstone in Cambridge. The first 3 years were brutal. Public defender overflow cases that paid almost nothing. Court-appointed work for defendants nobody else wanted to touch. I learned to survive on coffee and determination, building a reputation one impossible case at a time. My family watched from their Beacon Hill perch, waiting for my failure. "Still chasing ambulances?" Derek would ask at the rare family dinners I attended. "Still helping corporations avoid consequences for killing people?" I'd reply. "We stopped pretending to like each other around year 4. By year 6, everything changed." I won the Morrison case, a man accused of a murder he didn't commit, convicted on fabricated evidence by a corrupt prosecutor. The appeals process took 18 months. The exoneration made national news. Suddenly, my phone rang constantly. By year 7, Hamilton Defense Associates had grown to 12 attorneys. We'd won 3 more wrongful conviction cases, exposed a pattern of prosecutorial misconduct in Suffolk County, and built a reputation as the firm that took cases other lawyers wouldn't touch, and won them. The Fitzgerald case came in year 8. Marcus Fitzgerald, a black veteran and small business owner, had been accused of securities fraud in a case that reeked of selective prosecution. The evidence was circumstantial, the investigation suspiciously targeted, and the media coverage racially coded. Every major firm in Boston had passed on the case. I took it. The trial lasted 6 weeks. I dismantled the prosecution's case piece by piece, exposed the investigation's origins in a competitor's complaint, and demonstrated that identical conduct by white executives had been ignored. The closing argument took 4 hours. Marcus Fitzgerald was acquitted on all counts. The Boston Globe called it a masterclass in criminal defense. The National Law Journal featured my photograph on their cover. Legal analysts dissected my cross-examinations for continuing education seminars. Judge William Harrington, who had presided over the trial, sent me a handwritten note. "In 30 years on the bench, I have never witnessed more brilliant advocacy. You have restored my faith in the adversarial system." I kept the note in my desk drawer. I had no idea he'd framed the verdict document on his chamber wall. My family never acknowledged any of it. In their world, success in criminal defense wasn't success at all. It was confirmation that I'd wasted my potential defending the wrong people. The ethics complaint arrived 3 weeks ago. Filed by Derek, co-signed by my parents, it alleged that I had never actually passed the Massachusetts bar exam. According to their complaint, I'd been practicing law illegally for 8 years, defrauding clients, and fabricating credentials. The supporting evidence was elaborate. Derek had obtained what he claimed were official records showing I'd failed the bar exam twice and never attempted it again. My parents had provided statements from supposed witnesses who'd heard me admit I wasn't really a lawyer. It was all fabricated. Every document, every statement, every piece of evidence was a lie. I called my own attorney, Patricia Okonkwo, immediately. "They manufactured fake bar records?" She was incredulous. That's not just an ethics violation. That's criminal fraud." Derek has connections at the Board of Bar Examiners. Someone owed him a favor. This is insane. Why would they do this? I'd thought about that question for weeks. The answer was simple and ugly. Because I'm finally successful on my own terms. Because the Fitzgerald case made me famous in a way they can't dismiss. Because my name is in the papers for something they're ashamed of, and they'd rather destroy me than accept that I chose a different path. That's pathological. That's my family. The disciplinary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in September. I arrived early, dressed in the same navy suit I'd worn for the Fitzgerald closing argument. Patricia sat beside me with boxes of documentation, actual bar admission records, certificates, court transcripts, a decade of evidence proving my legitimacy. Derek arrived with our parents and his own attorney, a junior partner from his firm who clearly hadn't done his homework on who I actually was. They staged their entrance for maximum impact, Derek in his $3,000 suit, Mom in pearls and practiced concern, Dad with his surgeon's authoritative bearing. They didn't look at me. I was the defendant, the problem to be eliminated. The disciplinary panel consisted of 3 members, 2 senior attorneys and Judge William Harrington, who served as presiding officer. I recognized his name on the panel roster but assumed he would remember one defense attorney among the hundreds who appeared before him. I was wrong. The proceedings began with Derek's attorney presenting the complaint. He outlined the allegations with practiced solemnity: unlicensed practice, client fraud, years of deception. The respondent has built her entire career on a lie, he concluded. She has never been a licensed attorney in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Every case she's handled, every client she's represented, every court appearance she's made has been a fraud upon the legal system. My mother dabbed at her eyes. My father nodded gravely. Derek barely contained his satisfaction. Judge Harrington opened my file to review the complaint documents. And stopped. His eyes moved from the file to my face. Back to the file. His expression shifted through recognition, confusion, and then something that looked like cold fury. Counsel, we need a brief recess. The 5-minute recess stretched to 15. Derek's confidence began to crack. His attorney whispered urgently. My parents exchanged worried glances. When Judge Harrington returned, he wasn't alone. He carried a framed document and what appeared to be additional files from his chambers. Before we proceed, he said, his voice deliberately controlled, I need to address something unusual about this case. He held up the framed document. This is the verdict form from Commonwealth v. Fitzgerald, decided in my courtroom 14 months ago. I had it framed because, in 30 years on the bench, it represents the finest example of criminal defense advocacy I have ever witnessed. He set the frame on the table where everyone could see it. The attorney who achieved that verdict is sitting in this room. She is the respondent in this hearing. Derek's face went white. Ms. Hamilton, Judge Harrington continued, argued that case for 6 weeks in my courtroom. I watched her cross-examine witnesses, challenge evidence, and deliver a closing argument that I have since used as a teaching example for law students. Are you suggesting, he turned to Derek's attorney, that she accomplished this while not being a licensed attorney? Your Honor, we have documentation. I've seen your documentation. Judge Harrington's voice could have frozen fire. I've also taken the liberty of obtaining Ms. Hamilton's actual bar records directly from the Board of Bar Examiners during our recess. He opened a file. Vanessa Hamilton. Passed the Massachusetts bar examination in July 2016. Score in the 97th percentile. Admitted to the bar in October 2016. License number 687432, currently active and in good standing. He set the official records on the table. The documents submitted with this complaint are forgeries. Poor ones, actually. The certificate numbers don't match the board's formatting system, and the signatures are digital copies that don't align with the originals from that time period. Derek stood abruptly. There must be some mistake. Sit down, Mr. Hamilton. Judge Harrington's command left no room for argument. The only mistake in this room was made by whoever thought they could fabricate evidence and present it to a disciplinary committee that includes a judge who knows the respondent's work personally. He turned to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, you co-signed this complaint. You provided supporting statements. I want to be very clear about what's happening here. You have submitted fraudulent documents to an official disciplinary proceeding. That is a criminal offense. My mother's practiced composure shattered. We didn't know. Derek said he had proof. You signed sworn statements supporting allegations you knew were false about your own daughter. Whether you created the forged documents or simply endorsed them, you are complicit in this fraud. The hearing transformed from my prosecution into theirs. Judge Harrington invited me to present evidence, which I did methodically. 8 years of court records. Exposed credentials from every case I'd handled. Exposed testimonials from judges, colleagues, and clients. The complete, documented history of a legitimate legal career. Then Patricia presented the forensic analysis of Derek's fabricated evidence. The documents submitted by the complainant were created approximately 6 weeks ago, she explained, displaying technical reports. Digital metadata shows they were produced on a computer registered to Derek Hamilton's law firm. The formatting inconsistencies indicate the creator had access to genuine bar documents but modified them incorrectly. Derek's attorney attempted to interrupt. My client was given these documents by whom? Judge Harrington asked, because if your client has an explanation for how forged documents were created on his firm's computer system, the committee would very much like to hear it. Silence. I watched my brother's career implode in real time. Everything he'd built, the partnership track, the prestigious firm, the Hamilton family legacy, crumbling because he couldn't tolerate his sister's success. This committee is dismissing the complaint against Vanessa Hamilton, Judge Harrington announced. Furthermore, we are referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation of filing fraudulent documents, perjury, and conspiracy to interfere with judicial proceedings. He looked directly at Derek. Mr. Hamilton, I would strongly suggest you retain criminal defense counsel. Given your apparent contempt for that area of practice, I recommend finding someone as skilled as your sister. He paused. Though I doubt she'll take your case. The aftermath unfolded over the following months. Derek was arrested 3 weeks after the hearing. The firm terminated him immediately. Partnership Track doesn't survive federal charges for fraud and perjury. His bar license was suspended pending the outcome of criminal proceedings. My parents weren't charged, but only because they cooperated fully with investigators, testifying that Derek had masterminded the scheme and assured them the evidence was legitimate. Their reputations in Boston society, however, were destroyed. The Globe ran a story about the prominent surgeon and socialite couple who tried to frame their daughter for practicing law illegally. They stopped attending charity galas. They resigned from their club memberships. They became exactly what they'd always feared, the subject of whispered scandal. Derek eventually pleaded guilty to reduced charges, filing false documents and making false statements. He received 18 months in federal prison and permanent disbarment. The Hamilton family legacy he'd been so determined to protect ended with a convicted felon. The federal investigation moved swiftly. Derek's firm conducted an internal audit that revealed he used company resources to create the forged documents, an offense that violated not only criminal law but his partnership agreement. The senior partners issued a statement distancing themselves from his actions, calling them a profound betrayal of the firm's values and the legal profession itself. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, Derek had looked down on my work, calling criminal defense ambulance chasing and bottom feeding. Now he needed exactly the kind of lawyer he'd always mocked. His attorney reached out to me once, testing whether I might consider representing my own brother. Patricia took the call. Ms. Hamilton declines, she told him. But she recommends your client find the best criminal defense attorney he can afford. He's going to need one. Derek ended up with a competent but unremarkable defense. He couldn't afford the top-tier representation his case required, legal fees had already drained his savings, and our parents, facing their own potential exposure, refused to help fund his defense. The plea deal was the best he could get, 18 months, federal minimum security, permanent disbarment. For a man who'd built his entire identity around his legal career, the disbarment was arguably worse than the prison time. My father tried to contact me once during this period. He showed up at my office unannounced, asking my receptionist if he could speak with me, privately, as family. I came out to the waiting area but didn't invite him in. Vanessa, we need to discuss. No, we don't. Your brother made mistakes, but surely. He didn't make mistakes. He manufactured evidence and filed fraudulent documents with a disciplinary committee to destroy my career. You co-signed the complaint. You gave sworn statements supporting his lies. We believed him when he said. You believed what you wanted to believe. You've wanted me to fail since the day I chose criminal defense over corporate law. Derek just gave you a weapon. He stood in my waiting room, surrounded by clients and staff, stripped of the authority he wielded everywhere else. For the first time in my life, I saw my father look small. Leave, I said. And don't come back. He left. He never came back. 6 months after the hearing, I received a letter from my mother. We never meant for things to go this far. Derek assured us he had legitimate concerns. We only wanted to protect the family name. I didn't respond for 2 weeks. When I finally did, I wrote 3 sentences. You tried to destroy my career with fabricated evidence. You signed sworn statements calling me a fraud. The only thing you were protecting was your own inability to accept that I succeeded on terms you didn't choose. I never heard from them again. Hamilton Defense Associates celebrated its 10th anniversary last month. We've grown to 23 attorneys. We've won 11 wrongful conviction cases, freed 8 innocent people from prison, and exposed corruption in 3 different prosecutors' offices. The National Law Journal named me one of the top 50 criminal defense attorneys in the country. Judge Harrington retired last year. At his farewell ceremony, he mentioned the Fitzgerald case as the highlight of his judicial career. He also mentioned, to considerable laughter, that he once presided over a disciplinary hearing where the complainant's evidence was so poorly forged that it insulted the intelligence of everyone in the room. I attended the ceremony. Afterward, he found me in the crowd. I still have that verdict framed, you know. It's in my study now. I'm honored, Your Honor. William. I'm retired. He smiled. Your brother, how is he handling things? I don't know. I haven't spoken to anyone in my family since the hearing. He nodded slowly. Some families can't survive success. They'd rather destroy their own than admit they were wrong. He shook my hand. You built something remarkable, Miss Hamilton. Don't ever let anyone make you apologize for that. My daughter was born 4 months ago. Her name is Eleanor, after my grandmother, the only Hamilton who ever supported my career choice, who died 2 years before the Fitzgerald case but told me on her deathbed that she knew IED changed people's lives. I hold Eleanor in the nursery of my Cambridge townhouse, purchased with money I earned defending people everyone else had given up on. I tell her stories about justice and determination, about standing up for the truth even when powerful people want to bury it. Your grandparents, my parents, won't be part of your life, I told her last night, though she's too young to understand. Your Uncle Derek is in prison. That's not punishment. It's consequence. When you try to destroy someone with lies, sometimes the truth destroys you instead. She blinked at me with those unfocused newborn eyes. You're going to do amazing things, Eleanor. And when you do, I'm going to support you, whatever you choose, whatever path you take. That's what family means. Not demanding you follow their script. Celebrating you for writing your own. I put her in her crib and watched her sleep. The weight of what might have been settled over me sometimes in these quiet moments. If the presiding judge had been anyone other than William Harrington, anyone who didn't have my verdict framed on his wall, the hearing might have played out differently. Derek's forged documents might have triggered an investigation that took months to resolve. My license might have been suspended during the review. Clients might have fled. The firm I'd spent 8 years building might have collapsed under the weight of manufactured scandal. But that's not what happened. Instead, my family walked into a disciplinary hearing expecting to finally prove I was the fraud they always claimed. Instead, they proved themselves. The presiding judge had my verdict framed on his wall. He knew exactly who I was before they opened their mouths. They thought they were exposing me. They were exposing themselves. And now, while Derek serves his sentence and my parents fade into the obscurity they feared most, Hamilton Defense Associates keeps growing. Keeps winning. Keeps proving that the only thing more powerful than family expectation is personal integrity. They wanted to disbar me. Instead, they disbarred themselves from my life. That's the only verdict that matters.